This is the podcast that we ask our guests from in front and behind the camera, how did they get their foot in the door? What was the key to unlocking their success? What's their story?
Today, we have two guests. The first has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and is best known for his iconic performance in Clockwork Orange. The second is a writer-director on the rise. Our guests today are actor Malcolm McDowell and James Marquand.
I'd love to go back and ask both of you how, your passion, obviously Malcolm, for acting, where did that come from? How did you first begin performing? I believe there was a sort of a shift when you were at boarding school. I believe that you kind of got involved in drama then.
Yes. I was 11. There was a lot of church going, which really didn't excite me too much. I was never into organized religion, but to get through the boredom of it, I really got into the hymns, which I loved, and by the way, still do. And so I would belt them out, I suppose, quite loudly. I don't know. And I didn't know this, but the headmaster, who was a real theater maniac, was standing behind me, and he was casting the Christmas show, which happened to be Aladdin. And so I guess he heard me singing and brought me in and went through on this piano, some of the songs that we would be singing in the thing. And I was cast from that. And then once I'd done that, then in the summer, we did a Shakespeare production. And I got to play all the great parts in Shakespeare, really, before I ever left school. I mean, it was really wonderful in many ways. In other ways, I was a little bummed out because I was into cricket and rugby and all that. And the rehearsal period was extensive. And, but really, that's where the bug took hold. And I thought to myself, well, if all else fails, I can always be an actor.
Well, you've done all right. It's worked out pretty well.
Yeah, my father was horrified, but I really, my father really, it was, he wasn't a wealthy man. He was a publican, ran a pub and all that, and a hotel. So for him to pay for me to go to a boarding school was a big deal, really. It was a big deal. And, I never really got to thank him enough, I don't think. I mean, unfortunately, he was an alcoholic, so he drank a lot of the profits. But before he did that, he sent me to the school, and it was this very strange place, but really fantastic. And I was there quite a long time. From 11 till 18, I think and those are the most formative years, And his sister, the headmaster, his sister was the wardrobe mistress at RADA. So we got all the great costumes, from RADA. She'd borrow them all. So it was really cool. It was really interesting. And yeah, so that's where it really started. And then I ended up with a lady called Mrs. Harold Ackley, who taught, she was a sort of, I guess, an acting coach, but she was so old. She was 80 when I went to her. And, she was, I went to her simply because I loved her stories of being a silent movie star. And, so she would talk to me about acting and say that, when you have a cup of tea, make sure that your pinky is thus, and stuff like that. And I would say, oh, yeah, that's very important. But of course, this was the era of Albert Finney, He was the actor that I saw in the Odeon Lime Street in Saturday Night, Sunday Morning, and thought, God, he's he's from Salford. It's only 30 miles away, not even. I could do that. I want to do that. And Albert was the sort of inspiration in a way to my generation, especially from the North. You know, and it was more suddenly working class actors were sort of were kind of the new thing. Well, ever since Look Back in Anger, things changed completely. And then, you know, the British film industry went through the whole kitchen sink thing and social dramas, telling it how it was like, you know, to live in the North, Taste of Honey, the loneliness of the long distance runner, all that came in. And I came in on the tail of that with If, which was a revolutionary movie. And at the time, it made quite a stir, luckily for me.
Wow.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what an amazing start. What it is,
Yeah.
the foundations of a career that, you know, you can go anywhere, even if you're really talented, and it just shows
Doesn't
you
matter.
stepping stones. Yeah, amazing.
I mean, seriously, and here's the interesting thing, you'll laugh. I had got down to the last two in like 6 or 7 movies before that and never got cast. And I always thought, wow, I'm down to the last two again. You know, so when I went to meet Lindsay Anderson, I was kind of, here we go again. You know, I'm not going to get it, but I'll be down to the last two. Now, weirdly, I didn't even know this, but Lindsay had 90% cast that part that I played, Mick Travis. He told me this later. And I went, good God, well, what happened to the guy, you know, that nearly got it? He went, oh, nothing. He ended up writing jingles for commercials. So it just shows you, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And anything could have changed. Like if you'd got any one of those other roles, it would have changed the whole trajectory of the whole career.
Somebody asked me actually on a podcast not long ago, what happened to the other two and why weren't they, you know, had great acting careers? I don't know what the answer is. I really don't have a clue. It's just that I guess that McTravis, you know, was a sort of pure revolutionary in a way, in a very naive way, of course, but it just happened to ignite what was happening in the country at the time. And it's all about timing, you know. And like Kubrick saw If and cast me in Clockwork Orange. I didn't have to do any auditions or anything. I was just cast, you know.
That's incredible. Well, we'll come back to that because I think that's like that's a milestone. That's something that kind of, you know, with any career, there's always those moments where you go, things changed. But in terms of James, I mean, you're growing up and having your father, obviously, Rich, be a director. I'm sure that was a huge influence on you going into the film industry. Where did your love of filmmaking and where did you decide you wanted to be a director? And obviously you write as well, but the directing, I'm sure, came first.
Yeah, no, it did. I think as I was growing up, I always loved films. For various reasons, I moved around a fair bit as I was growing up. So I was often, you know, the new kid at school. And I struggled in school because I'm dyslexic. So arriving somewhere new and then, you know, at this time, I think there was probably less understanding of dyslexia than there is now. And then finding out that, you know, I wasn't going to do very well academically. I was also in a very academic household. So I was definitely the odd one out. And I suppose for those reasons, you know, beyond the obvious, I mean, my dad started out as a documentary filmmaker when I was young. So at this point, he was more doing documentaries than dramas, even though he had a background as an actor. before that. And my stepfather and my mother were both documentary filmmakers. So I was in that environment. So I understood about filmmaking through being with them. But I guess I loved films, drama, and escaping to the cinema. And I would often play hooky from school and go see a film. And I suppose I can remember going to see some films with my dad. For my birthday, I remember going to see Live and Let Die, Diamonds Are Forever with Sean Connery. I must have been very young, in London. And then later, I remember he took me to see Bridge on the River Kwai in the cinema, not when it came out, by the way. So I had this, I was surrounded by people who were interested in film. And later we moved to Boston, and I really didn't want to be there in America because my stepfather and my mum got work over there making documentaries. And I can remember seeing, films that had a huge influence on me. Boston's a university town. There's so many cinephiles there and so much opportunity to see films there in the cinema. I saw everything. I can remember going to see kind of art house films with my mum and my stepfather around Harvard University in Cambridge, and then going to downtown Boston with my friends and seeing like Enter the Dragon and kung fu movies and stuff like that as I was growing up, when I should have been in school. And so I was kind of immersed in film and always thought I would. I didn't know whether I wanted to be a director or not, but I always thought there was something here that I would love to be involved in some way. The only two things I was any good at school was I was reasonably good at sport and I was reasonably good at art. Those were my two sort of things where I could do okay. And I remember in Boston seeing, there were some British movies I saw for someone who wanted to be back in Britain, were very influential, which was The Long Good Friday, and Quadrophenia, which, funnily enough, was edited by who ended up being my dad's editor, Sean Barton, who did my dad's films, and Clockwork Orange, which I saw. I don't know how many times I watched Clockwork Orange, and I identified with Alex in a probably very unhealthy way at the time. So yeah, it was. I think it was escapism that got me interested in film.
Wow, that's so funny. The crossover.
Yeah.
Wow, that's mad. Yeah, very interesting that you wanted to be back in England, and then you were obviously drawn to those British films, and they're iconic movies now. I do remember you saying when we worked together a few years ago that you obviously spent time with your dad on set and on Star Wars and things like that. And I was trying to do the maths and figure out how old you would have been at that time, but you would have been pretty young. That world must have felt very alluring at the time. Yeah. Were you in your 20s?
No, I was younger than that. I think I had some time on set of all of his films, feature films. Not the Legacy, which was kind of a disaster at the time. Although I've heard lately that it's got some cult following, as a sort of camp 80s horror thing.
The Eye of the Needle, though, was something I remember you mentioning.
Yeah, I was there for a lot of that. That was pretty amazing. I guess by that point I was a teenager, and I was starting to pay attention to how you make films and how my dad worked as a director. I think he and I suppose I have been influenced by him. I remember when I first started out, he was very interested in actors. He started as an actor himself, and he basically said to me that as a director, you just need two things. You need a great script and you need great actors. Then you'll be okay as a director. You know, that was kind of like the basic. And I remember thinking, having watched like Scorsese and maybe more virtuoso filmmakers, that I was very interested in how you move the camera. You know, I had probably more of a visual way of looking at things than my dad did. But in the end, of course, I realized that he's right. You know, in a way, that stuff is choices that you make as a director, but you really, really do need a good script and great actors, and then you'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%, 100%. And Malcolm, to go back to you, and I'm sure if you're bored to tears of talking about Clockwork Orange, we can bypass it completely. Is it something you're willing to just talk about, that getting that role? You said you were offered it.
Yeah.
Being on set with Stanley Kubrick, who is, you know, as we all know, an absolute icon. The experience of that, are you open to talking about that at all? I mean, if you're bored of it,
Sure.
moving on.
I mean, I don't think I'm bored with it. You know, of course, I've talked about it an awful lot, but then people want to know about it. I got a call from him, not from my agent, from Stanley Kubrick. I wasn't quite sure who it was. I thought I had a feeling I was going to meet Stanley Kramer.
Right.
It kind of got a little confused in my mind. But of course, I knew who Kubrick was. But I was doing another film at the time with Brian Forbes at Elstree. And Kubrick lived in Borehamwood, which is right at Elstree. So in the lunch hour, I said, well, I could see you in my lunch hour, you know. He said, okay. So I went to see him, and it was very nice. He took me into his, you know, he had a big house, but I remember I was taken into a small room, which I guess was his study or something. But I noticed as I walked through the house that everything on the walls was covered with big bath towels. And I went, are you trying to, you know, protect the art on the walls? He goes, no, they're just, it was schedules and photographs of locations and that he didn't want people to see. He was pretty paranoid about a lot of things. So I just, you know, went, oh, okay. So we had a nice chat, and then I said, look, I've got to get back, Stanley. I just came in my lunch hour. I'm on set and I'm first up. Is there anything you wanted particularly to see me about? He said, well, yeah. And I could see he didn't want to tell me what the script was or something. And it was like, it was strange, you know. And he said, well, have you heard of this book? And I went, no, I haven't. He said, really? Oh, it's quite a cult book. And I went, well, I don't know it. He said, well, read it and call me. So I, you know, went off and then did my scene that I had to do that day. And I started to read this book, and I found it really hard to read. I had to keep going back to the glossary at the back of the book. And so I read it, and then I thought, well, I better read it again, because stopping and starting and all that. So I read it second time, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. How is he going to make a movie of this? Then the third time I read it, I went, well, this is some part, you know. I mean, this is a career-defining part. It's incredible. I have no idea how to play this, but anyway, so I called him, but it'd been a week, and I think he was, quite surprised that, you know, he was expecting me to call him the next day, I think. I said to him, look, I didn't want to call you after the first read. I really wanted to, you know, delve myself into the book so that I could really talk to you in some coherent way about it. And he went, oh, okay, well, fine. And so there was a pause, and I said, look, are you offering me the part? Now, actors are not supposed to say that. But I thought, fuck it. I'm sick of fucking around, with promising this, and I don't want to really do the dance. Either I'm playing it or I'm not. If I'm not, fine, on to the next. And he quietly said, yes. So it was enough that I heard it. And I said, well, I'd like you to come to my house. Which I didn't know that Stanley never left his house. He was completely paranoid. So when he came into the cul-de-sac that I was living in, I had this great house in Kensington. It was right near Notting Hill Gate. It was a cul-de-sac. And I saw this kind of fleet of cars. I was looking out of my kitchen window. I thought, what the hell? There was a Land Rover, a Mercedes, and Stanley. And they couldn't park because it was a cul-de-sac and there was no parking. So they just parked in the middle of the street. And he got out. He was looking for the thing. And anyway, that's the way it started. And, we got on very well. But, and I did. So we'd get into, he'd tell me about lenses that he was going to use. And he would talk about the microphones that, the radio mics. Now, I don't think any film had been shot with these radio mics at that point. We shot everything with radio mics, which was amazing. That we shot on the embankment with trucks, lorries going by, and the noise was deafening. And I didn't have to post-sync one word of that movie.
Wow.
All I did was the voiceover, which is, of course, like another character.
Mm.
But basically, so all the technical side of filming, Kubrick was a genius, a master, and nobody could touch him. Look at what he did with 2001. It is a masterpiece of what he did. I mean, it's still, I think, standard bearer. There'd be no Star Wars without Stanley Kubrick. That's for sure.
Mm.
I mean, he literally took science fiction on a millennium jump from Flash Gordon and cardboard sets, to this extraordinary world that he created on this spaceship. I mean, it was mind-boggling, really. Anyway, of course, I didn't know at the time, but this was Stanley's answer, Clockwork Orange, to a low-budget movie, and that he wanted to prove that he could bring it in for the right price, because the costs of 2001 had just run amok, gone crazy, brought down MGM, it brought down the board, the whole thing. And he wanted to prove that he could make a low-budget movie that was really great. And I think he did that, no doubt about it. But in fact, it was Warner Brothers' most successful film that year, which was pretty remarkable considering there was some pretty good movies at Warner's,
Yeah. I mean,
Anyway, I can't remember which ones they were, but I think maybe Peckinpah had a movie, and anyway, whatever.
The Big Wild Bunch? Maybe it was the Wild Bunch.
Oh, the Wild Bunch, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a great movie too. I really like that movie.
Mm.
It's interesting though that he didn't want to talk about the character, so that was a bit of a smokescreen for me, because we were talking about everything around the essence, but we never talked about the essence. And I guess, I don't know, I'd forgotten or whatever that. And I got wrapped up in the pre-production. I mean, that's where he did his directing, by the way, of me. It was before we ever went on the set. I got to know him so well in that 6 months before. And he got to know me and my sense of humor and all the rest of it. And because, I mean, I thought we were making a black comedy, that's, and I think I was in a minority of that at the time. Now they laugh like crazy at it, but at the time it was so shocking, when it came out. But so what happened was I sort of panicked a week before the shooting of the movie, and because I really, I really didn't know how to play it, and it hadn't come to me yet. I didn't have a clear picture in my head of what I wanted to achieve. So I took the script over to Lindsay Anderson, and he was like, "Oh, do I have to read it?" I went, "Look, yes, you do. This would be a great favor. I need your input on this." He said, "Well, good God, you've been working on it." I went, "I know, and I still don't understand it." So he started to read it. I went out for a coffee. He lived in Swiss Cottage. I went out for coffee and sort of took an hour and a half just mucking around. I came back. The first thing he said when I went into his apartment was, "Well, thank God I don't have to direct this." I went, "All right, I know. No, it's not your kind of thing, Linz. But look," he goes, "Look, Malcolm, I'll tell you how you play this." Now, this was the genius of Lindsay. He goes, "There's a shot in If, when you open the gymnasium doors to be beaten by the prefects. I mean, and you look at them and you smile. That's how you play it." And I went, "Oh my God, yes. Yes. Linz, oh God, come on, I'll take you to lunch."
That's incredible.
And that was it. That's all it needed, was that kind of, it's just a brilliant piece of direction. He was that way though. He had a knack of just hitting the right thing. There was this actor who was in Czechoslovakia, was a big star, called Vladimir Puchholt. He was the star of Blonde in Love, the Milos Forman movie, and many movies. He was a big star. And he'd actually left Czechoslovakia and got political asylum in London. And so Lindsay said, he was talking about Vladimir Puchholt this, Vladimir this, and he was going to work as an orderly in a hospital and all this kind of stuff. And I said, "Look, who is Vladimir Puchholt?" And he said, "Well, Malcolm, he is the Tom Courtenay of Czechoslovakia, where there is no Albert Finney." Just think of that. That is a very perceptive, extraordinary description.
Wow, he had a way with words.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
But that was, just a beautiful thing to say, and immediately you get the reference, and also it tells you something about what's going on in Czechoslovakia, because Albert was danger and edge.
Malcolm, did you tell Stanley that you got a directing tip?
No, are you kidding? But Stanley, anyway, he was completely inspired by If, and I think used great chunks of it,
Yeah.
The truth is, I said, "How many times did you see this film?" I went, "You saw it twice?" I went, 3. "You saw it 4 times." He went, "He saw it 5 times." Yeah. Now, Christiana told me that he was quite desperate to see it because he'd heard a lot about it. So, he had a projectionist up at his house, and they got the copy from Paramount. Christiana told me this way after Stanley had passed away. She said, "You came on, played your first scene with a scarf covering your face, and you've grown a mustache in the holidays, and then you have this scene, you cut it off, you're shaving." And Stanley hit the intercom button and told the projectionist, "Relay set up, play it again." And he did that 2 or 3 times. And after the third time, he looked at Christiana and said, "We found our Alex." So she told me that. I would never have known.
And that
Quite
presumably
nice.
that was before you had your meeting with him.
Oh, yeah, before, way before.
Interesting.
I had no idea that. But then he did tell me he'd put the book away because he couldn't cast it.
Yeah.
He put the book down and went back to having a go again at Napoleon.
Oh wow, that would have been.
Now, here's a weird thing, is that I knew Ian Holm quite well, and Ian Holm had been cast as Napoleon. I didn't know this. I meet Ian Holm. We're both shopping on Notting Hill Gate, right? And he goes, "Hey, Malcolm, how are you? God, it's good. I haven't seen you in, I was at Stratford and in his Henry V, brilliant actor. And so we were chatting, and he said, "Well, what are you doing? Because you did this movie that was a real big success, this If." I went, "I know, I really lucked out on that one. Well, I'm working with this man, Stanley Kubrick." And he literally was like I'd hit him over the head with a hammer or something. And I went, "What? What? Do you know him?" He goes, "Be careful of that son of a bitch." I went, "Oh, well, why?" He goes, "He cast me as Napoleon. I spent 18 months of my life, with him and hanging around up there and, at the house, the kids, and blah, 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 blah. I knew the whole scene." I went, and he said he couldn't get the money, but I wouldn't have known that because he never called me. I couldn't get him on the phone. I never heard another word. It suddenly stopped. He didn't even call him to say, "Look, I'm sorry, we can't get the money. It's not going to work out." Just nothing. But that's kind of Stanley's MO,
That would have been fascinating to see, though. Ian Holm was, that's an amazing image of that character.
Yeah. Well, Ian, he was physically exactly. I mean, he was very short. I think he was only 5'2" or 3, but I mean, one of the most dynamic actors. I mean, when I was a young actor at Stratford, what I watched him in the wings every performance of Henry V. He was absolutely amazing. And it's one of the greatest performances I've ever seen on stage. Still is. Even though I saw a lot of Olivier and all that. But Ian Holm's performance as Henry V, it still is a beacon in my mind. He was so incredible. Really, it was really fantastic. He was a nice guy too.
I know it's not a film that people really talk about his performance in, but Alien, he's incredible.
Oh yeah.
I mean that, and it's so understated, and it's just a beautiful performance. And it's not the kind of film people really talk about in that way, but
no. Well, he was a great actor, and the thing is, he made his mark on stage, of course. He played some really interesting parts. He was in Chariots of Fire, really good movies, but he didn't have, the great part in a movie, as far as I remember. Anyway, maybe he did, but I don't remember it. You need a Clockwork Orange or something, something that's just out there, and it's career defining in a way. And he should have had that because he had, oodles of talent. He was, well, of course, he did it on stage, so he had a great career and he was a great actor. So
now for a quick break. We'll be back to the episode shortly. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support us, get early access and exclusive content and episodes, click to join our YouTube channel and become a member now.
Please leave us a positive rating. Add us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at lifeinfilmpod. Essentially, please like and subscribe everything. It makes a huge difference. Thank you.
Life in Film has partnered with Betterhelp to provide you with access to the largest online therapy service in the world. And it can all be done from the comfort of your own home, from a phone, tablet or laptop. No commute, cutting down travel costs, and most importantly, it's affordable. With over 1,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise in mental health. If you need someone to talk to and you're thinking of giving therapy a go, BetterHelp is a great option. And being a listener of the podcast, you get 10% off. That's 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. That's betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. We are sponsored by movieposters.com. Are you a movie fan? I presume you are. Well, at movieposters.com, you can shop for all your favourite posters in one place. The #1 source for high quality, authentic movie posters. From new releases to cult classics and 100% authentic originals. Thinking of having a browse? Well, if you see a poster that tickles your fancy, as a listener of the podcast, you get 10% off. That's 10% off with promo code lifeinfilm10. That's promo code lifeinfilm10. So why not give it a go?
And back to the show.
You know this is all a game, and you still want to play it.
I came to the premiere for The Partisan, known James for many years, and I was blown away by this, man. What a beautiful looking film. And we know that this has been a long journey to the screen. So the first thing I'd like to ask is, how did you get this greenlit? And you obviously wrote it, you directed it. A lot of passion has gone into this, but you've made it. It's there, it's done. You obviously got the wonderful McDowell in there as well. How did this happen? How did it get greenlit?
Actually, I think the green light I wasn't really involved with. I just got a call saying, do you want to write the script? Which then became, COVID hit, and that then became, do you want to direct it as well? Because the guy who was originally going to direct it dropped out. So so that bit was quite easy for me, the green light. But then everything that happened after that was not so easy, except of course getting Malcolm when I told him I was a Liverpool fan.
Is that how it happened, Malcolm? Is that the truth?
He knew the way to my heart. No, the truth is, I read the script and really liked the script. And then I heard it was being shot in Warsaw, which I'm sort of fascinated by Polish culture, and I've always liked Poland and the Polish people for some reason. My early films, and I'm going back to the 60s, early 70s, were shown illegally in Poland. And if they'd been caught showing them, they would have been in trouble. But and I heard that years later, that those films gave people a lift, which was very satisfying. So I've always kind of liked it a lot. And I'd done another movie there, I think 5 years before or something ridiculous or whatever it was. And the extraordinary thing was when I arrived, the lady, who was adorable, who doing the costumes for this, came in with a stack of photographs and showed me that her father did the costumes for the film that I'd done 30 years earlier, or 25 years, I can't even remember.
Wow.
And there he was. So there was an immediate, wonderful connection.
Mm-hmm.
That was really cool. Did you remember that, James? I don't know.
Yeah. I was just thinking there, I wonder if it was the same costumes.
Well, it could have been, because I was playing a Wehrmacht general.
Right.
I think so. It's slightly above the pay grade of the Nazis in our film. But it was lovely, actually. It was a really nice feeling and she was so proud of her father. It was really a beautiful moment, actually.
Oh,
It was really cool.
And the film it's about an incredible character. I mean, you follow this incredible woman, and the fact it's a true story. How did you become aware of this, James? Was it something that you were, fascinated by before you got involved with the script?
It's strange, actually, because I knew about her. Not many people did or do in the UK, actually, or in Poland. I think she got lost in the time of communism when Malcolm was in the Rebel Alliance with his films in the 60s and 70s. So she was a kind of forgotten person, but I knew about her because I had a Polish grandmother who told me about her when I was a boy and very keen on James Bond. And she told me that the real James Bond is this Polish lady called Krystyna Skarbek. So I knew a little bit about her already, but I mean, she was in the memory banks, but I'd kind of forgotten about it. And then, as I say, like I was approached just before COVID by the producers saying, they wanted to make this film about her, and they were funded, and would I write the script? So it was a kind of weird. Well, it's very exciting. I remember the way it happened. They kind of said we're making a World War II spy movie about a Polish spy who worked for the British. And then I finished the sentence and said, and her name is Krystyna Skarbek.
Oh, wow.
And, and they said, yeah, how did you know? So it was one of those strange, nice moments that happened.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's incredible, really. It's like a full circle moment that you've had, coming back into your life after so much time. But yeah, I'm really intrigued, and I don't know how much of this you want to talk about in terms of, because I always think about after I watch a film and I've enjoyed it, what was the budget? How did they do this? Are you willing to go into sort of details of sort of, how the money came about and what kind of budget we're talking about? Because I think it's quite fascinating, how much money goes into films and how they come about. I don't know if it was a bit of a taboo subject, but if you're willing.
I would be willing, but I actually don't know a huge amount about it. I mean, I think it was a split. It was a British Polish co-production. The Polish money came from the Polish film fund, and the British money came through a company called Lip Sync, which was run by a guy called Norman Merry, who's a bit of a champion of independent film in Britain, who sadly died not long ago, just I don't know, a month ago or something. And so basically it was split between those two organizations, but the details beyond that I don't really know. And in terms of the budget, I mean, you've seen it. It looks like a very big budget film, but I suspect it's less of a budget than you might think it is.
Yeah, some of the visual effects are really, really good. Really, really, really good. And Malcolm, in terms of your character, I mean, looking at your CV, I'm very aware of the films you've done. You've got an incredible career. Does each role, when you're preparing for something like this, is there do you have a way of prepping for a role, or does it really depend on the role that you're going in for and you're doing? Do you kind of home it down to is there a process that you go with?
No, I mean, it's basically you take every part on its merits, I like to do most things I do instinctively. I don't want to overanalyze it, or I just would want to do it, and that's pretty much the way I've always been. But when I worked with the great Lindsay Anderson, that's the way he wanted me to do it. He didn't want me to think about it. He didn't really want to talk about it. He would just say, "Now go on, do it," and that was it. For me, it's a very much an instinctive process, and still is. I mean, luckily, we've done 2 films together now, James and I, and I think it's basically the same thing, wasn't it, James, on Dog and Bull as well? Same.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, truthfully, sometimes it has to be that way, even if you wanted to do it differently, because the schedule means you're just, you're just kind of racing to get through things. But I think
that's true.
In the Partisan, and maybe that's a good thing. I mean, I definitely agree. It's that often the best the best moments on screen are ones that have an element of kind of improvisation and good luck. I find, and I think with the Partisan, Malcolm also had a huge amount of dialogue in his scenes. Basically explaining to everybody what the hell's going on and what they've got to do.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably a big challenge for that part, trying to make it believable and natural.
And I'd never played a spy before. Not that really is. No, it's weird. I sort of thinking about it, never actually played one. And so I think that was sort of intriguing. And also the fact that I think all people of my generation remember the spy master of all spy masters was Alec Guinness in the John le Carre Smiley's People. That was done, I think, on the BBC, right, James? Wasn't it in the 70s or 80s?
Yeah,
70s.
I think it's all on YouTube now. It's amazing.
I mean, his Smiley was without doubt staggering,
Yeah.
And so I think that was always in my brain because it's so indelible, his performance. I mean, even though we're completely different, there is a nod to the great actor that he was, Guinness. He was one of our great actors. And sadly, he's one of the very few that I didn't work with. I worked with the other three greats, Gielgud, Olivier, and Richardson. But I never worked with Alec Guinness, and I was always regretted that. I worked with Paul Scofield, too. He was another great actor, really fantastic.
What was Richardson like? I heard some.
Oh my God!
Stories. I heard he was a real character.
Total character, yeah. I mean, absolute character. Couldn't remember what time of day it was, but it didn't really matter. It was just so unique, that, and the readings of some lines was beyond belief. You go, how's anybody going to believe it? But when it was all together, it was beautiful, and unique.
Wow.
Yeah. Did he drive a Harley Davidson or something? I heard, and he had a parrot.
Right. Yeah, he had it was a BMW.
Right.
It was a big BMW where the cylinders weren't going this way, they were going that way.
Right.
I remember, big fat thing. And there was always the thing of him lighting a rocket from the roof of the National on first night and all that kind of stuff. And they used to still do it in his memory. He was, what a character. And David Story told me a great thing about him, that, he'd written this play for Ralph called Early Days, which was a mass of dialogue for him. And, he was all over the map, but didn't really matter because, it's not that important in a way. It was just his physical presence. But David said he was standing in the wings at the National Theatre looking out, and you could just see the back of Ralph's head and his ears. And he was looking at the actress he was playing the scene with, and it was Rosemary Martin, a wonderful actress. And of course, Ralph had gone up, forgotten the lines. And he said, you could see on Rosemary's face, she was willing him the line. And the line, or the word that came out of his mouth on her expression was one of such incredulity that she was like, what? And the word was croissant. Now, I mean, and I thought, well, there but for the grace of God go I, because I know it's, I've been there, done it myself, come out with the most extraordinary things. But He was just so remarkable. Actually, it was great fun working with him, and he was in Oh Lucky Man. That's the only thing I did with Ralph. With John, I did a couple more things, and John Gielgud was wonderful too, in a very different way. Very different.
I believe Oh Lucky Man, that was kind of based on you, wasn't it?
Sort of, very loosely. I mean, I wanted to work with Lindsay Anderson again,
Mm.
and the only way I could get him involved was to start writing something that he would sort of connect with and then kind of take over.
Mm.
Because I knew that was his MO, that's the way he worked. He wouldn't ever do an accepted script, although he did one later on in his life. He wanted to work on it, to, have somebody else write it, but he go around and listen to what he had to say and where was it going to go and the construction of the screenplay and all the rest of it. And that's what happened. And when he read my draft, it was 40 pages. He read it and he went, "Is this supposed to be a comedy?" And I said, "Yes, it is. It is. But of course, it's a northern sense of humor, Lindsay. And sadly, you're from the South." And he said, "Actually, old boy, I'm a Scot." I went, "Yes, of course, of course." Anyway, he said, "Oh, Malcolm, it's not very good, is it?" And with the sort of exuberance of youth, I said, "Yes, it is good, and it's going to be your next film." And he went, "Really? Oh, well, then you better call David Sherwin, who'd written If."
Wow.
And that was it. And I gave it to David. He was round at my flat for dinner, and while we were cooking, I said, "Go in the bedroom and read it." And he came out and he said, "This is bloody fantastic. This is our next film." So he saw something. Lindsay wasn't sure, but once we got into it, we inveigled him in. And that was just the way he was, and that's the way he worked.
Wow. I guess a career like yours has spanned decades, and there must be so many little moments that are like that, where you're like, well, that was a bit of a chance. And then, sliding doors moments, really. Most embarrassing moments, Before we go, I'd love to ask, and it's a bit of a stupid question, but it is a kind of tradition with this podcast. I'd like to ask, and for Malcolm, I think it will probably be, do you have an audition, a horrendous audition moment that you remember from back in the day when you were like fighting for those first few jobs? And with
Yes.
James, I don't know if you have that accumulative sort of story, but if Malcolm, if you go first.
I was in rep at Torquay, and I was writing to everyone trying to get auditions. I got an audition for Peter Pan, and it was a big deal, but I had to get the milk train from Torquay to London. Just got me there at 7 a.m, do the audition at 10 or whatever it was, and then get back on the train to get back for the evening show. So all night, the damn train was one of those slow, it was a milk train, stopping, every tiny station, the damn thing stopped. So I got there, and I don't even know what the part was, but I had to say, "Oh, Sparky." That's how it started. I got onto the stage at the Scala and said, "Oh," and they went, "Thank you." And I went, "What?" I went, "Whoa, no, sorry. I'm going to finish this fucking thing. I got on a milk train to get here. Took me 5 hours. I'm going to finish it." So they were like, "Oh." I did it. "Oh, Sparky, fuck that." And stalked off when I'd done it, right? I walked straight through the stage door, walked into the street. The producer came running after me. He said, "Look, I'm terribly sorry, but that was really good. I love the anger, but that's not right for the part." And I went, "Oh, you then." And I went straight back to Euston or Paddington, wherever it was, to get back on the bloody train.
I love that you had to get back on the train afterwards. Just
Yeah,
fuming the whole
amazing.
way. That's genius. James, do you have any sort of early on stories of humiliation that you're willing to share?
I have plenty. I was actually thinking I might break with your tradition and actually do a positive one
Oh yeah, go on.
because they're
Yeah.
rarer. In that sense, more interesting to me. And actually, I think it relates to Malcolm as well. When we finished the Partisan, well, while we were working on it, Malcolm and I were talking about doing another film, and we came up with a couple of things. Malcolm's childhood growing up in a pub. Boston, there's a famous criminal from Boston called Whitey Bulger, who was famously on the run for a long time. There's been a few films kind of based on his life made. Jack Nicholson and what was the other one? Black Books. I can't remember. Anyway, he was a real criminal. Who was sort of active in
Hiding in plain sight. That was the thing.
Yeah, yeah. So we were talking about these things, these something we could maybe do together, and also I think we also were talking about how we both missed our dogs, which brought the other aspect of this film. So I sort of said, well, let me try and I'll just try and write a treatment, and we kicked around this treatment for a while, back and forth, after the filming stopped, and I got a call, very fortunate call from another producer who wanted me to direct a script they had, and they were in a real rush. They had the money, not a lot of money, but they had the money, and they wanted to shoot in a few months. And they sent me the script, and I sort of thought about it for a while. I didn't like it, but I thought, well, it's here, it's got money, maybe I should just do it. And I was trying to think of a way maybe they'd let me rewrite it a little bit and make it better. But I kind of chanced my arm, and I said to them, look, I don't know if I really want to do this, but I have this treatment that this is something I want to do with Malcolm, and Malcolm's attached. Could we maybe do this instead? And they were like, okay, we'll send the treatment. I sent the treatment, and they said, yeah, okay, let's do it. How quickly can you write the script? Because we're filming we need to start filming in 3 months. And I said, just give me a few weeks, which was a complete lie. Especially as a dyslexic, that adds to the fun of trying.
I hope you got it proofread.
I did. Luckily, I was in holiday in France with my family, and my wife is an English teacher, and my sons are very clever. Okay. So I had them on board to proofread, and I wrote it in like 3 weeks, and I was saying to Malcolm, "You're not going to believe this, but I think we're going to pull this off. Are you available before Christmas?" And I know he was kind of like, "Yeah, that sounds great." And Malcolm, you can say what you were really thinking.
No, I don't think I've ever had something come together that fast ever in my life.
No,
I mean, it was like, what?
Yeah.
I think I've got the money. I mean, I just got the script. You went, yeah, I know. I went, well, hey, let's do it. Yeah.
It just happened like instantly. It was carnage and chaos, like always. But I handed the script in sort of September, and we started
shooting in November, weren't we?
Yeah.
Wow. Having got all the locations and everything else.
Yeah,
and the other cast.
Yeah.
You got
a terrific cast. Finished.
Yeah. I mean, I've handed the director's cut in.
You know what, though? I have to tell you, James, sometimes it's so much better not to have too much thinking time. You just do it. And, it was a fantastic shoot. in the main. I mean, there were
Yep.
some wrinkles, as we know, but in the main, it was fantastic. It came together really well. It was brutal, shooting on a boat in the North Sea. I mean, come on. And shooting with a dog. But I do remember saying, all right, let's get a two shot and then do my single and then do the reverse on the dog and I'll see you tomorrow. Because
By the
I
way,
knew
that,
that
that was
dog
also that was in a boat as well. So yeah.
in a boat. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, but it's all there on the screen and you can't fake it. So
No.
Oh
it's
man, I
great.
look forward to seeing
But
that.
I
That
think
sounds really
I
cool.
think you underestimate, James, your talent. But your talent is amazing because you are a real auteur. You write the script and you direct it obviously as well, but and you cast it very well. And as your dad said, the script and the cast. Casting, well, Lindsay said it's 90% of it is casting it. Because I remember he was casting at the Royal Court, and we went and had lunch. He said, I'm looking for this in a play, one of David's plays, David's story. And then I went away on holiday. I come back. I went to see him. I said, you're still casting that part? What the hell? You can't make up your mind? He goes, no, I just can't make a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's it.
Well,
I mean, it's a little easier in the theater. You can't do it in a movie
yeah.
because there's no money, there's no wiggle room, is there?
No, absolutely not. But
No.
I think everybody will see soon. Malcolm is amazing in the lead part in this film. It's called Dog and Bull, by the way. He's which is a sort of homage to Malcolm's dad's pub, which was called
Yeah.
the Bull and Dog. We flipped it around.
Yeah.
He's incredible in it, and I just to flip back to the Partisan. I think also Morgane, who plays the main part, Morgane Polanski, who
I was going to say that she's absolutely brilliant, and the whole movie really it really is dependent on her to deliver a really great performance of subtlety, of strength, of every damned emotion you can think of is in that character. And you totally believe her. Gives one of the most wonderful performances, and she's a great actress, that girl. And it's really great because she's also nice.
Always a bonus because you never know.
absolutely.
Well, I've worked with a few that are very
Yeah, I'm
talented that ain't
sure.
so nice.
I'd like to say, because you did bring up there that James is great at picking cast and putting together a movie like this. When we worked together on Beautiful Devils, which is it's got to be 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you, James, because you took a chance on me. You and Manny Puro cast me in that film, and I had never played a villain, and everyone was trying to cast me as a northerner because I just done Northern Soul, and it was like I was trying to get out of that rut, and you were the first lot of people to give me that opportunity to play something completely different.
Yeah.
And that role was so fun, man. It was so fun.
Thinking about it, I never considered it till you just said that. There is a touch of Alex in your performance, actually, thinking about it.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to see this.
Yeah, he's great. I mean,
Cool.
I'll take that.
It's Othello. He's basically
You cast me as essentially Iago, and it's like a dream role. But yeah, I've never really said that to you, but thank you, because it was one of the most fun shoots I've had.
It was great. It was fun.
Work with you was brilliant, man. And I totally get what Malcolm's saying there, that when you're on set, the way you work is just it was very satisfying. Really enjoyed it. So I wanted to say that. But
cheers. Thanks a lot.
But guys, thank you so much for taking the time. And I'm so sorry that I've overrun. I was late. I've overrun. We're still talking, but you guys are still here. I hope that you just enjoyed having this conversation and chatting about movies. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys both taking the time. So thank you so much. And
you bet.
a wicked episode.
Great.
Okay.
Good fun.
Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Good.
Cheers.
Cheers,
Bye.
guys.
Talk to you soon. Talk to you soon, James.
Yeah. Adios.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode and you want to support us, get early access and exclusive content, all ad-free, click and join the Life in Film YouTube channel and become a member now. Thank you to our guests, James and Malcolm. Thank you to Debbie and the team at AIM Publicity. As always, thank you to our sponsors, movieposters.com and BetterHelp.